and welcome to On the Table as we're coming to you outside of our regular bulletin of Malaysia Tonight. I'm your host, Otto Othman, and with the all-new RTM ASEAN block, we're broadcasting on RTM Click and MyTV's Berita RTM channel, which is also live streaming on YouTube. Now, on tonight's episode of this next 30 minutes, we're broadcasting live and also discussing the ASEAN Association of Southeast Asian Nation, ASEAN, as the regional bloc celebrates its 57th anniversary. Now, we welcome to the studio Associate Professor Dr. Roy Anthony Rogers of the Asia-Europe Institute of Center of ASEAN and Regionalism at the University in Malaya. So good to have you here, Doctor. Thank you very much for coming to the studio.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Now, Dr. Roy, I just want to ask you, with regards to this 57th anniversary, Doctor, when it comes to this, what is your opinion on the development and also achievements so far?
Well, we need to, I think to a certain extent, we have to appreciate ASEAN's existence, as you rightly mentioned, for the past 57 years. Firstly, we need to know that the region, or Southeast Asia we call it, is a very diverse region of different types of different categories of economic development, our history, in terms of even language for that matter. We have, Bahasa Malaysia, Bahasa Indonesia, Tagalog in the Philippines, and then Thai, and also in terms of the political system. But yet, despite of our differences, ASEAN has been able to bring all the 10 countries, hopefully eventually Timor-Leste may join eventually, but to bring these 10 countries within one organization, something which is not an easy task, number one. Number two, we will want to discuss about its successes. One will have to understand that in the past 50 years, since its establishment in 1967, the ASEAN has been able to kind of mitigate the interstate conflict among the countries, that it didn't lead to a conflict of a full-fledged war. Yes, I don't deny in the late 70s there was the war between Vietnam and Cambodia, but these two countries were not yet members of ASEAN. But members who have already joined ASEAN, we never really gone to war, or that's what I mean, we have been able to mitigate the interstate conflict. So I would say these are one among the successes of ASEAN, bringing the different countries and communities under one organization. And it is one organization that survived for so many years. Mm-hmm. There have been many regional organizations that were established during the era of the Cold War, and they ceased to exist. One example within Southeast Asia that was known as SEATO, Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. Today there is no more SEATO, but yet ASEAN survived until now for the past 57 years. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to that, I'm just interested to know as well, there are a couple of failures when it comes to organizations and so on. You just mentioned ASA?
SEATO, yeah.
SEATO, yes, yeah. And there's also ESA, was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And what makes ASEAN such stand strong till now? What do you think?
Well, I think the ingredient or the formula for ASEAN to survive until today is its very own system itself, that we are developing countries who have achieved independence in the past 60 years or so, and coming together to kind of celebrate this unity in diversity, in the sense that, yes, we have our limitations, as you have rightly mentioned, but what makes ASEAN survive until today is that we are able to kind of accept others as they are, you know, within the principle of you know, consensus, you know, or the concept of musyawarah, you know, this discussion together, coming out with our own consensus. So I think these are some of the ingredients of success. Although some may argue that this slows ASEAN down, but yet I think that is our strength as well.
Now, it seems that there are certain individuals, or possibly, do you believe that ASEAN is just a talk shop, yeah, rather than achieving any goals, or what do you believe on that?
Well, there are critics on about ASEAN, I don't deny. And one of them, as you rightly mentioned, that ASEAN is seen as a talk shop. Talk shop as much as it's, but at least we talk. You see, in any relations, from family right until we go up to the nation, you need to interact and engage. And through talking, we try to understand each other and try to resolve, right, our differences. This year is 2024, which marks the 110th anniversary of the outbreak of the First World War. First World War erupted in 1914. And one of the major causes of the First World War was the European countries at that time, they never discussed much about their differences. Each one had a, you know, like building blocks or fortress, and then suspicion among themselves. And that have led to the outbreak of the First World War. So talking to me, engaging each other is extremely important, right? To kind of see our differences and try to resolve it. So I think as much as the critics say ASEAN is a talk shop, but to me, we need to talk to resolve our problem, you know, and bring it to a different level. Yeah, diplomats meet many times through the various ASEAN forums and meetings. They talk and they try to come up with some solutions, and they bring up back to their own capital. I think that is a strength of ASEAN, actually.
I do believe so as well. When it comes to strength, I think talking is one of the ways that we communicate our differences and see where we can work on that.
And we know each other by talking. You know, the Malay proverb, tak kenal maka tak cinta. All right? So it's by talking you know each other, and slowly you build up that confidence.
So would you say that due to the war back in those days, those years, it actually sparked the interest towards building ASEAN, building a foundation within ASEAN to foster more relationship, more cooperation, rather than focusing on the differences whereby a war might start?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what is meant by ASEAN centrality with regards to this? And could you actually describe the efforts to actually achieve it?
Yeah, you see the terminology of ASEAN centrality, but I must say that it's very common. Perhaps it's like part of the norms to come up with certain jargons and all. But this word ASEAN centrality was initially used in 2008 in the ASEAN Charter, if I'm not mistaken, Article 1.15 or something like that, which spells out ASEAN centrality. And so there have been various definitions of ASEAN centrality depending on whom you ask. Different personalities or scholars may come up with different ideas. But to me, basically, ASEAN centrality is the unity of ASEAN, unity of ASEAN members, especially while interacting with external powers or external actors. So that of course, there's this argument that ASEAN becomes the driver. ASEAN becomes the driver, or ASEAN becomes the key focus of its members, especially when you know, in dealing with external actors, and also, you know, that of course, how do we achieve that is, I think, the bigger challenge than the definition, because as you know, there are issues on how bring the 10 members together. And I have to be frank, and there have been times that that has not been too successful. For example, in 2012, when Cambodia once was the chair, also when the issue of South China Sea, the members were not able to come up with a joint communique that shows that the fragmentation of ASEAN, how within ASEAN itself. So these are challenges. So how do we draw the members together?
Talk shop.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the only solution.
Yes.
Yeah, talk it over and find some research and data to actually signify that we can actually solve this issue.
Yeah, and also I think sometimes ASEAN prefers to kind of shelf the problem and not to kind of approach it immediately. That may be seen by some quarters as a limitation of ASEAN, but to me that is also sometimes, as they say, time heals, or time will resolve the problem by itself. When you are too impatient to resolve the problem, it may end up with other problems. So again, what may be seen as the limitations of ASEAN, it could be a strength of ASEAN. Yeah.
So it's all about perspective here.
Yeah.
When a certain issue is boiling up to an extent where it's almost like to its very pressure point, it's best to just sit back, relax for a while, shelve it, as like what you said,
yeah,
and reflect back on the issue and come back to it when everybody's safe. How we say safe.
I mean, and that is also manifest. We have this sometimes in family disputes. You see, sometimes you just have a deadlock, and it's better to let time heal, and then we'll come back to that. And rather than you go on, direct confrontation, and ended up everyone is in blue.
Yeah. Understood.
Yeah.
Now this next question is here. What are the challenges that ASEAN has to face to achieve ASEAN centrality? I think. What are your thoughts on that?
As I said, the challenges is trying to get the consensus of all members. ASEAN works on consensus. So the issue of unity, right? Because again, members are very much driven by their own national interests, and that is common. So I think one of the major challenge of ASEAN centrality is also how do we get all members to kind of unite in one stand on certain issues. That the central issue that ASEAN becomes one of the key pillars in their decision making when it comes to foreign policy. I think that is one of the challenge.
So centrality is more like a concept towards another eventuality of something. But do you think that this kind of phrase or word per se is key towards developing a better nation or a better cooperation with other ASEAN nations?
Yes, indeed. I mean, that is like a goal that we set, that we want to achieve, right? Of course, there are limitations. There are sometimes we have to kind of reflect on ourselves. But I think by the concept itself is a noble concept, which members, as I said, in 2008 when the ASEAN Charter was launched, it was set in the ASEAN Charter. Right. So with the aim to kind of inspire the member states at that time to work towards a more united ASEAN.
So it's more reinventing yourself and also innovating itself towards a better future, and also catering to all the ASEAN nations as well.
Yes, indeed.
All right, so thank you very much, Doctor.
Most welcome.
Before that, we are going to delve into more ASEAN centrality in just a bit, and with that, we're going to take a very short break and much more, so stick around right here.
The number of malicious and false statements spread by SMS or social media platforms have become too widespread. The public is advised to be careful and not fall for such ploys and sharing or forwarding such messages. Remember that spreading fake news is an offence under Section 233 of the Communications and Multimedia Act 1998. This carries a penalty of a fine not exceeding 50,000 ringgit or up to 1 year imprisonment or both upon conviction.
Welcome back. Now, before our short break, I was asking our good doctor and guest today on ASEAN centrality and the challenges that we face to achieve it. Now, Doctor, is ASEAN often compared to European Union? I just like to ask that as well. When it comes to the EU, is it apt to compare EU and ASEAN?
Well, there has been a kind of practice or some scholars have want to compare the EU with ASEAN, but to me personally, they are two separate organizations in terms of the philosophy itself. You see, the EU or European Union was established back immediately shortly right after the Second World War, right, in 1951, with the agreement for the coal and steel among the European countries. And the whole idea was to kind of integrate these countries, the European countries, because they have been fighting wars for generations, bloody wars, to name a few, like the First World War, Second World War. So the European Union was initially, or that was meant to integrate these European countries to kind of reduce the rise of ultra-nationalism that contributed to the First World War and Second World War. So the aim was eventually to kind of create a supranational organization, which today we have the EU. Right, when in 1951, when they signed this agreement, and then eventually led to the establishment of the European Community, and then now we have EU, European Union, and things like that. So the whole idea was to kind of integrate these countries to reduce any possibilities of ultra-nationalism, which will contribute to war. Okay, that was the idea of the EU in its establishment. Whereas in the case of ASEAN in 1967, was not to consolidate or to integrate the sovereignty of these countries, because in 1967 the countries in Southeast Asia, like when it was established, ASEAN was established, the 5 founding members like Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines, they just got their independence within the few decades, In the case of Malaysia, it was just 10 years after our independence. So the idea was not to kind of consolidate these sovereignties of these countries, but rather to kind of group them together so that they will preserve their sovereignty vis-a-vis external powers. So you can see the philosophy of their establishment itself. EU was kind of to, although I don't mean to pull all these countries together, but to kind of bring these countries so that they will reduce their ultra-nationalism. Right? And reduce the possibilities of war among them. Whereas in the case of ASEAN in 1967 was to these 5 countries, they still will maintain their sovereignty in terms, and then by working together in the spirit of solidarity, vis-a-vis external, any form of external. That's one. All right. Apart from that, I think EU has more legalistic approach, whereas ASEAN is more on consensus. So to me, it's not absolutely fair to kind of compare these two organizations. Yes, they are regional organizations. Yep. But you have to compare, say, apple with an apple or orange with an orange. You can't compare, say, durian with orange. It's too different. If you want to compare durian, Malaysian durian, Thai durian, maybe you can. Or, that because both are the same type of fruits. Yeah.
Thank you for comparing and giving us a clear picture on the uniqueness of ASEAN. Now, there are also criticism of ASEAN is for the elitists, I believe. So can you make an ASEAN people-centric, more towards people interest, make it more aware about ASEAN.
Yes, and this is also one of the major challenges that ASEAN faces, that it has been seen as elitist organization where leaders come for their summit and then they have the famous ASEAN handshake and things like that, which is fine. But how do try to make ASEAN to be known to the man in the street? The man in the street will also be well aware about ASEAN. I think that is one of the major challenges. And I think how do we overcome this concept, how do we overcome this perception that ASEAN is being seen as an elitist organization just among the leaders of the respective state? Is as mentioned, that how do we make it more people-oriented? Is perhaps to promote ASEAN to the ordinary people through education. I think it has been done, but we should strengthen this effort through education in schools, and apart from that, perhaps we can have a pool of scholarships, ASEAN scholarship, to provide more of these scholarships, so that students will know that they will want to aspire to get ASEAN scholarship. And also we do have, for example, the ASEAN University Network. Universities within the region, they have a network of various universities. Perhaps may come a time we can promote or to have established what we call the ASEAN University. You have the United Nations University, right? Perhaps one day we may come to have an ASEAN University, and students, when they apply, they can apply to enter ASEAN University. These are one of these. And apart from that, intensify. We have in the airport ASEAN Lane. That members or citizens from among the 10 countries, instead of lining up, so you have an ASEAN lane. So still with that, people will slowly get to know about ASEAN. The man in the street will know more about ASEAN and how would ASEAN benefit them on a daily basis. It does, but the message doesn't get across.
Probably the approach as well.
True.
The approach probably like we are having a competition. I think it just ended when it comes to participants around ASEAN, where they take a picture of their culture and post it up. That's currently happening right now. So that's probably one of the approaches that could benefit also the layman, and making them understand how ASEAN is actually benefiting the people on the grassroots levels.
And also promote more of ASEAN movies in our cinemas. Of course, it's fine we watch movies from US or from but also ASEAN movies from from Indonesia, from Thailand. Of course with the subtitles and things.
Definitely. Now, moving on to the next question, Doctor. In 2025, Malaysia will be chairman of ASEAN. Now, what agenda can Malaysia bring when it is ASEAN chairman?
Well, it is a practice among the ASEAN members that they take turns. The last time Malaysia was the chair was in 2015. So now 10 years, because we have 10 members. So now back to Malaysia as the chair. I think one area which perhaps Malaysia can promote when we become the chair of ASEAN is also to bring about this concept of ZOFAN, which is already there. The concept of ZOFAN, Zone of Peace, Freedom and Neutrality. It was when Malaysia was hosting the summit in 1971 during the era of the Cold War, because Southeast Asia is situated in the center of the Cold War back then. Of course, at that time was between the US and the Soviet Union. Of course, that all this is already past, it's already history. But today, like it or not, we are facing the competition or between US and China. So I think Cold War, one may say, is Cold War 2.0 or some form of there is this competition between these two major powers. And the concept of ZOFAN is very much still relevant today. Perhaps ZOFAN 2.0. You say, so perhaps Malaysia should again, reinforce this concept of that Southeast Asia remain as a zone of neutral and peace, and we do not want to be dragged or make to choose either China or the United States. So I think this could be one agenda which Malaysia can promote when it becomes the chair of ASEAN in 2025. Besides that, also I think bringing about the greater involvement of non-state actors in ASEAN. And of course, today we have also other forms of challenges such as environmental problems and things. So these are some of the areas, that Malaysia, when it becomes the chair of ASEAN in 2025, can promote in line with the SDG, the goals of SDG.
Well, thank you very much for that insight, Doctor. One of the main challenges ASEAN faces is Myanmar. Now, in your view, what can Malaysia do to deal with the Myanmar issue?
Well, Myanmar issue, if I may say, has become almost like a thorn in the flesh for ASEAN. Since 2021, with the military coup d'etat, of course there have been the 5-point consensus of ASEAN that ASEAN brought forward, but it appears that it is moving very slowly. To be fair, I can't say that it has failed. It is moving, but it's still moving slowly because what among them is like the stop of violence, and we still read in the news or we hear from the news that while there is violence going on in Myanmar, and then so these are some of the challenges that ASEAN faces. So when Malaysia becomes the chair of ASEAN in 2025, perhaps I think is also to bring about engagement in terms of track 1 and track 2 diplomacy. Track 1 is state to state, right? But sometimes track 1 has its limitations because, when it comes to diplomacy, it has a lot of do's and don'ts for the diplomats. They are confined. Whereas track 2 diplomacy, which consists of non-state actors, they are not so much confined to all the diplomatic norms. So I think Malaysia can further promote track 2 diplomacy to engage the current government and through track 2 diplomacy. So this is, I think, some areas that we may want to engage.
Now, Doctor, lastly, before we let you go, what is your suggestion to strengthen ASEAN by 2027 and when ASEAN celebrates its 70th anniversary?
Oh yeah, that will be, I would say, 70 years is something which, almost a complete one generation, I would say. I think among the suggestions, or what I could suggest is, how do we bring members together and also to promote ASEAN, as I said, to the ordinary people. That is, to make ASEAN more known to everyone.
To everyone. So basically, it's moving towards together and achieving same goal to, like sovereignty, making sure that we are, banded together no matter what might happen in the near future. Thank you so much for that, Doctor, for coming to the studio. Now, that's all the time that we've got on the table this evening. We've been talking to Associate Professor Dr. Roy Anthony Rogers of the Asia-Europe Institute and Center of ASEAN Regionalism at University Malaya. Now, a repeat of this episode's broadcast can be viewed again at the same time tomorrow and subsequent days on both RTM Click and MyTV's Berita RTM channel, which is also live streaming on YouTube. Now, till next Thursday, where we'll delve on another topic of interest, I'm Otto Othman, signing off.